What are some of the psychological tactics that will be used to push the V word for 9-1 DIVOC on you? Find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me. I'm over on Instagram. Go follow Jimmy Rants over on Instagram. We go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so be there, be square. Thanks so much for being here today. We also simulcast over here on Twitch, as well as on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay right here on the Jimmy Rants Instagram feed. We put it up on IGTV. I do put a little snippet of it, like about 15 minutes of it, up over on my Living Low Carb Man page and as well as on YouTube, just so you can get a little taste of it. Some people have complained, wow, these are long shows. I don't know if I have time. So I always post a little 15-minute snippet for those of you that don't have a lot of time, but you want to get some of the information that is included in here. So that's how you catch it on Instagram. Then over on YouTube, we put all the past episodes up over there as well. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. And then finally, pop over to the official website. It is JimmyRants.com. And while you're there at JimmyRants.com, you can access all the past episodes there as well. No matter what happens in the social media world with all the censorship going on, no matter what happens, all of my episodes will be at JimmyRants.com. Okay, guys, sorry I am a little bit late because I actually was printing out a press release that literally came out 5 minutes ago. And it was from one of the major health organizations out there, nutritional health organizations, the Weston A. Price Foundation. They have put out a press release warning against the 9-1 DIVOC V word. And those of you that are new, 9-1 DIVOC, just do that backwards. What is that? Oh, yeah, that's it. And then V word is that thing they want to stick you with in your arm to prevent 9-1 DIVOC, supposedly. So I have a very interesting topic today that I think you're going to find really curious because you're probably already noticing it's happening. And it's psychology that's being used on you to push this 9-1 DIVOC V word. And we're going to get really deep. I've got a lot of information to share with you about that. But before we get into that, let's look at this literally right off of the presses. I just printed it like 5 minutes ago. The headline, Nutrition Foundation warns against the 9-1 DIVOC V word. It does not work and adverse reactions are likely. So the Weston A. Price Foundation is an international nutrition education foundation, and they are warning that the 9-1 DIVOC V word will not protect against 9-1 DIVOC and is likely to cause some serious side effects. Consumers have a right to know that this V word could have serious life-altering side effects. What the science demonstrates thus far is that some participants in the V word trials still got the disease even after they got the V word. And health officials admit that the V word will not end wearing a mask. It will not end the lockdowns. The Weston A. Price Foundation has issued the following important points about the 9-1 DIVOC V word. So here are their major concerns with this V word. The minor impact, manufacturers claim that 9-1 DIVOC V words are 95% effective, but the FDA, listen to this, is allowing companies to define effectiveness as the prevention of mild symptoms. The studies are not designed to detect a reduction in outcomes, things like severe illness, hospitalization, or even death. For individuals who get severe symptoms, the V word is simply not a remedy. Instead, we offer up nutritional and oxidative support to keep the illness from going into overdrive. If you're just joining us, I am reading from a press release. Literally just came in, hot off the presses. That's why I was a little bit late to Jimmy Rants today. From the Weston A. Price Foundation, they are warning people about this V word for 9-1 DIVOC. So what are the adverse reactions? Some participants in every single one of the 9-1 DIVOC V word trials have reported adverse reactions, things like high fever, chills, muscle pain, headaches. Some have even reported severe reactions that required hospitalization, invasive treatment. According to the FDA, potential long-term effects of this V word may include Guillain-Barré syndrome, brain swelling, muscle weakness, paralysis, convulsions, seizure, stroke, narcolepsy, shock, heart attack, autoimmune disease, arthritis, joint pain, multi-system inflammatory syndrome, especially in children, and death. Some UK health workers have already experienced anaphylactic shock after getting just one dose of the V word. So this is at the Weston A. Price Foundation website. Somebody says, please send a link to the report. WestonAprice.org, I believe, is their website. Let me look on here. I'm sure. Yeah. WestonAprice.org/coronavirus. And you can get this entire press release that has all of these things I'm reading off to you. The next concern, it won't prevent 9-1 DIVOC. Isn't the whole point of having the V word to prevent 9-1 DIVOC? Well, they're saying that an FDA Pfizer briefing paper that was published back on December the 10th revealed 43% more cases of 9-1 DIVOC in those who got the V word than those in the placebo group within 7 days of getting the V word. Isn't that something? Then there's no liability. 19 vaccine manufacturers will be protected from all liability if you get injured. You simply cannot sue. They have complete indemnity, even though all previous attempts at creating a V word for coronavirus has caused harm and never advanced to regulatory approval. Remember, FDA has only given emergency use authorization, not FDA approval yet. That has not happened. Everybody thinks because the V word is out there that it's safe and FDA is given approval. They have not. They basically said, well, we don't know, but we know that this needs to get out there because it's a pandemic and da-da-da. And so emergency use authorization is why it's out there. It will not end the restrictive measures. Dr. Anthony Fauci has already acknowledged that the V word may prevent some symptoms, but it will not block the spread of the virus. So V word recipients will still have to wear a mask, still have to socially distance, and still have to stay at home in lockdown and avoid crowds. The Weston A. Price Foundation says this V word is not necessary. According to the CDC's current best estimate, the infection fatality rate, the IFR, for 9-1 DIVOC, less than 1% for people under the age of 70, including a 0.003% infection fatality rate for kids. And then the last point they had, it could, those of you that are women, and still of childbearing age, if you take the V word, it could make you sterile. Two prominent doctors, including the ex-head of Pfizer's respiratory research, warns that 9-1 DIVOC V words contain a spike protein called Synctin-1, and it's vital for the formulation of the placenta. If the V word triggers an immune response to this protein, then female infertility, miscarriage, and birth defects could result. Again, hot off the presses, you guys, straight from the Weston A. Price Foundation. If you want to look this up and see all these statistics for yourself, go to westonaprice.org/coronavirus and you can get all of that information. But that's not what I was going to talk about today. That literally just came in right before I got on the air, and I wanted to get that out to you guys since it does relate a little bit to what we're talking about here today. We are currently being marketed to. Did you know that? And when I mean marketed, they're not selling us on any product. They're selling us on going against our own good gut instincts. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I have had pretty good gut instincts in my life. I'm a thinker. I'm someone who likes to be challenged on what I believe and what I think, so that then I could be better and refine my thinking and continue to refine my thinking always. And so I am constantly on the lookout for any information that would improve, what I believe, why I believe it, da-da-da. There are some people out there, though, that choose to let other people think for them. and they are very easily manipulated through psychological tactics. And that's what I'm afraid is happening right now with this 9-1 DIVOC V word. They are using these very tactics, and I've got a bunch of stories today that I'm going to go over about some of these tactics that they're using. And they're not even trying to hide that they're using these tactics to try to convince you that you need to be taking this shot for the V word. So let's get into some of this. Here's an article from Psychology Today. Will Americans take the 9-1 DIVOC V word? All indications are that a significant number will delay or outright refuse the V word. If you have checked news headlines recently, chances are you've seen the rah-rah, we can't wait stories about the forthcoming 9-1 DIVOC V word. Last week, I searched for the phrase 9-1 DIVOC V word as I was writing this post, and every recent news article that came up was all optimistic about it. The news stories covered the FDA's accelerated timeline to approve the emergency use authorization V word, how quickly the V word is going to be distributed throughout the country, who should get the V word first, and how it's going to improve those who travel by plane. In these narratives, the media seem to be banking on the implicit assumption that Americans simply can't wait to get the V word because they're ready to be rid of this 9-1 DIVOC virus, and they will line up in droves to do so the moment it's available. However, dig a little deeper, and the situation is quite a bit more nuanced and uncertain than that. So in this post, we're going to examine the validity of the optimistic narrative that Americans will widely adopt the 9-1 DIVOC V word. Is this reasonable for them to expect? Will the V word be widely accepted and adopted quickly as its access spreads? Or should we be wary and prepare for a slow and faltering adoption? I want to answer each of these questions considering recent survey data through the lens of psychology. So, I do think that they're putting on a face right now in the mainstream of, oh yeah, everybody's getting this. Of course everybody's getting it. And so natural human instinct wants you to go along with the crowd because nobody wants to stand out. Nobody wants to be outside of what everyone else is doing. And so they will go along with the crowd. That's kind of what they're banking on. What they haven't banked on is there's a whole lot of people, myself included, probably a lot of you guys, that we're just very skeptical about this. And it's going to be an uphill battle for them to try to convince us. And we're going to get into some tactics they're going to try to use on us to convince us to take this V word. So what do the V word for 9-1 DIVOC intention surveys find? Here are snippets of survey results conducted with Americans by different reputable organizations. Each survey asked the V word intentions questions differently, and there were methodological differences, but together they paint a consistent picture. In September 2020, the Pew Research Center, 49% say they definitely or probably would not get the V word. This number was 27% in May, suggesting that there's more widespread resistance by the time the fall came. I wonder since September what that has done. Pew, do another study or survey, because I think you might be surprised to find that 49% is probably in the 60s now. In early October, a poll conducted for CNN found similar results. 51% say they would try to get the V word. 45% said they are not going to try. An October poll by Gallup asked if an FDA-approved V word to prevent 9-1 DIVOC was available right now at no cost, would you agree to get the V word? At the beginning of November, the percentage saying yes was 58%, which was up from 50% in October. And then finally, according to Morning Consult's November 30th, 2020 update, the share of adults who said they'd get the coronavirus V word if one became available ticked down to 50%. And the headline number has steadily declined in the surveys, starting from a high of 72%. 8%. If we generalize from these surveys, it's clear that there is a large and significant proportion, anywhere from a third to half of Americans, are unlikely to take a V word, even if it's free and widely available. Note that this includes both people who are likely to actively refuse it and those who are hesitant at the moment that they responded but may get on board once they see others get the V word. So that is a good line of distinction. There are some people that are just absolutely no, will never do it, don't even think about it. That's a group. Then you've got people, and this is where some of these psychological tactics we're going to talk about here in a minute will work. You have people that say, okay, let's see other people take it and see how they react. And we've seen already some of the responses of people and how they have reacted to it. We've heard a few little reports. You're not hearing it on the mainstream television. You're having to see it on the internet, hang out on Twitter and type in various keywords, and you will find some of these videos. We know that two groups are significantly affected by 9-1 DIVOC, specifically the frontline healthcare workers and those who are older Americans. Where do they stand on the V word? The results from the surveys of these two groups are telling. A survey conducted by the American Nurses Foundation that included 12,939 nurses in October found that only 34% say they would voluntarily take the V word. Did you hear that? These are nurses of a large organization of nurses. And only 1/3 said, yeah, I'll do it. So what does that mean for the other 2/3? Why are they hesitant if there's confidence in this V word? 36% flat out said they're refusing. And then 31% of the nurses said they were unsure. Another academic survey of 1,069 healthcare workers in September found that 66.5% of them wanted to delay getting the V word, with 49.9% indicating they would prefer to wait and see how the V word affects others first. These are medical professionals saying, yeah, I don't want to be the guinea pig for this thing because I know it was rushed. I know it's a mRNA and that's never happened before. I know a lot of problems in the phase 3 clinical trials with I don't want to be the reason why someone takes or doesn't take this. Now, isn't that curious? As a layperson, as a patient, are you concerned that half of these survey participants in the healthcare world don't even want to take the V word until they see how it works on other people first? Ominously, but not surprisingly, the author said, notably, we observed several instances where women and racial or ethnic minorities expressed much more hesitant attitudes towards V words than their counterparts. Yes, look up the Tuskegee experiment and you'll know why black people don't like the idea of a V word and them being first. I don't blame them. Don't blame them one bit. Look up your history, people, because this is a thing. And it's a huge thing that they're going to have to overcome, especially with that population. University of Michigan physicians surveyed 1,556 older Americans between the ages of 50 and 80 in October. They found that 58% of them indicated they would likely get the V word, while 28% were unlikely and 14% unsure. There were also racial differences, with a higher proportion of white respondents saying that they would get the V word, 63%, Hispanic, 51%, and Black, 40%, for the reasons we just mentioned. Other surveys have also found that Black Americans are a lot more cynical about the 9-1 DIVOC V word than other groups, and they have lower intentions to take it. These findings are quite consistent across studies, and it leads to two rather gloomy conclusions. An even greater proportion of healthcare workers compared to the general American public is not on board with the 9-1 DIVOC V word. This is a problem. Healthcare workers tend to be the experts that patients look up to. They're the opinion leaders that drive adoption by their patients and their communities. If they are themselves resistant, they could alarm lay people and slow down the V word adoption amongst the people they influence. I just posted on my stories today yet another nurse who said no way, no how on this V word. And she articulated all of her reasons. We're not hearing about that in the mainstream, which is why I highlight them when I find them on social media. I highlight them on my social media so people can see, yeah, there is some hesitancy, no matter what you're seeing out there as this concerted effort. And this is part of the psychological tactics, you guys. One of the things they're doing is they're only showing you the rah-rah, look at me, I got vaccinated, oh my God, and it's just this ruse, because that's not the reality of what's happening. The second concern and gloomy conclusion is a significant number of vulnerable groups like older Americans in general, Hispanic, Black, older Americans in particular, are indifferent, or even worse, they're resistant to getting the V word at the moment. So at least 3 reasons raise the distinct and frightening possibility that many respondents who say they will get the V word in a survey may not follow through. So even though people said, yeah, I'll get it, there are some reasons they're going to articulate why they may not. First, at this moment in time, the act of V-wording against 9-1 DIVOC has a robust social desirability. So right now, everybody's excited. Oh, it's finally, we can bring an end to all the everything that's been miserable this last year, because all they've fed us all year long is fear, 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 fear. And now they want us to swallow that fear all at the altar of the 9-1 DIVOC V word, and supposedly that fear is going to go away. But as we saw from the Weston A. Price Foundation, no, we're still going to have to wear a mask, still going to have to socially distance, still going to have to be locked down and avoid crowds and avoid seeing grandma. Things aren't changing even with the V word, and yet they promised all year that's exactly what would happen. Refusing to V word has all sorts of negative connotations attached to it. This may result in a significant degree of saying when respondents don't mean it. There may be people who are resistant to wanting to take it, and they have to be convinced with some of the things we're going to talk about in a second. Second, in the best of times, getting V-worded, like other medical procedures, is an effortful behavior. Some 9-1 DIVOC V-words require even more effort than normal. 2 doses have to be taken weeks apart, with the possibility of not feeling well after the first dose. We've heard quite a few of those. In the clinical trials, by the way, that they did do, when people had adverse reactions to the V word, guess when it happened? After the second dose, because in the second dose, it tends to be a little bit stronger presence of the V word. And so that's when people got sick. That's what I'm waiting on seeing. I want to see, okay, all those people who are first in line to get the V word, the Pfizer one, they get it 3 weeks later. So here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see people getting their second dose. The Moderna one, which just came out, it's 4 weeks between those doses. So by the end of January, we'll be seeing how those people do. And that's kind of where we are right now, waiting for those 2 doses. In social psychology, we know all too well that when behavior involves including an effort to get there, the gap between behavioral intentions and behavior increases. Enthusiasm does not always translate into action. So all those people that are like, yeah, I'm going to take the V word. Yeah. And what do you mean I got to do 2 doses? And people will back away. Third, getting the 9-1 DIVOC V word is inherently risky at the moment. And given its nature, there's no way to reduce the risk. This is because some of the risk arises from the potential long-term adverse consequences of taking the V word. Well, the reason there's adverse potential consequences is they didn't do the proper clinical trials. I have talked until I'm blue in the face on this show about why it's important for these clinical trials to be the length of time that they are. Phase 1 is typically the animal trials. It goes somewhere from 6 months to 12 months. You test it in animals, see how the animal does. Okay, you got kind of a running kind of idea of what's going to happen in the animal's body, and then you start testing it on a very small select portion of humans in the phase 2 trials. Those trials can go somewhere from 12 to 18 months, and in that 12 to 18 months with those very minimal, very few people, you kind of test the efficacy in humans. And then once you're comfortable enough that it's not harming those humans in the phase 2 trial, then you move on to the phase 3 trial with a much larger population of human beings, and you test those people between 5 to 7 years. Because what you want to do is put the V word in them and then see what happens over the long term. All 3 of those trials, which should usually take almost a decade to accomplish, got done in 10 months. And we wonder why people are having some adverse reactions. We didn't do the proper testing, guys. And I've had some pushback from nurses and other people in the medical world. Oh, well, you don't understand. These mRNA V words have been in production for over a decade. They're right. It has been in production for over a decade. And I've done my research on this. When they started working on them was right after the swine flu, the H1N1. Back in 2009-10, and they were doing animal studies with the mRNA, and the animals were getting significantly sick. And so they never really progressed to human trials until this year. And now, with what they're distributing, these millions of doses that people are taking, those millions of doses, you guys are the human guinea pigs, those of you that have taken it. You are the phase 3 clinical trial. And this is going to be a big obstacle if they're trying to get people to take the 9-1-DIVOC V word. A lot of us might see, okay, what's happening over the next few years of these people who have gotten it, because we never got the clinical trial. We need sufficient time to pass, at minimum several months, more realistically 2 to 3 years, post-inoculation, just to see what will happen. There's just no way to know if anything bad is going to happen by taking the V word over the long term. When the time to get V worded draws near, this unknown risk is likely to loom large for so many people that could potentially take this, resulting in a lack of follow-through. So that's the challenge they're facing, and this is why they're putting on a good front right now, you guys. If you watch any news coverage of this, all of it is, oh, we're so happy the V word is here. Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. Oh, we're so happy. Everybody's getting it. Please take it. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing. And it's going to help bring an end to this pandemic. Oh, I'm sorry, it won't. But oh my goodness. And it's just such a ruse. They're trying to pull the wool over our eyes, making it seem like things are okay. The mainstream media is painting a far too positive and one-sided picture of the 9-1-DIVOC V word adoption, especially about the early days and weeks after it becomes available. This rosy-eyed narrative ignores the very real possibility that a majority of Americans, including a significant portion of healthcare workers and those in the most vulnerable groups, will refuse to take the V word and at least delay it for a lot longer than the current scenarios suggest. The most formidable challenge public health officials may face is not getting the 9-1-DIVOC V word doses ready and distributing them widely across the country, but instead in persuading them to take the V word sooner than later, or even worse, not taking it at all. So this was a wonderful article in Psychology Today. Will Americans take the 9-1-DIVOC V word? Go look it up if you want to read that. But they're expressing, and it was a good setup for what I'm going to talk about, all of these psychological tactics that are going to be used and are currently being used to push the 9-1-DIVOC V word. Now, earlier in the year, I did a Jimmy Rants episode where researchers were looking at what messages will resonate the best in promoting a V word. Remember that one, you guys? It was something like May or June, July, somewhere in there, where they did this study. And apparently the study's done. I haven't been able to locate the final results. I haven't seen it published anywhere yet. But they literally were looking at every angle of how you can convince people. Oh, you need to promote their civic duty. You need to shame them. You need to make them feel like it will give them benefit and da-da-da. And it was all these different things. So now what they're doing is they are wielding the psychology that's out there and trying to convince you. So let me kind of skip through some of these different articles to see the tactics that they're going to use. All right. Health experts say 70% of Americans need to be V-word to reach the level of herd immunity. Actually, Dr. Fauci recently announced it could be as high as 90%. And I wondered what was his intention of saying we need 90% in order to reach herd immunity. Maybe that was a psychological tactic of, oh crap, 90%. Well, I was planning on not taking the V word, but since it needs 90%, maybe I should do my civic duty and go get it. Maybe that was a psychological ploy. As soon as he said 90%, I went, Because originally they were like, oh, if we reach like 65, 70%, we're getting close to herd immunity. And so now he's moved the goalpost to 90? Don't think that wasn't by accident. To choose to take the 9-1 DIVOC V word, individuals must have a perception of the severity of the virus and that a V word will be effective, as well as a belief that they're at risk of contracting it. Well, the problem isn't that believing we're at risk of contracting it. Every single one of us is at risk of contracting it. That's not the issue. What they're not paying attention to is a lot of us aren't worried about it because we feel like we're doing good things for our health. And if even when it does hit our bodies, we've done enough to protect ourselves and put ourselves in the best possible position so that when 9-1 DIVOC hits us, we will recover. That's what they're not taking into account. And we're also weighing, okay, how much of the effects, side effects that come from the V word and the unknowns of the side effects with the V word are much worse than getting the virus itself. Like, think about that. This is what's going into a lot of people's heads right now of, well, I'll take my chances with the virus because what I've heard about the V word is far worse than anything that this virus is going to do to me. Anticipated regret is also a robust predictor of how health decisions are made. Humans can imagine how they would feel if they chose not to be V-worded and then got the 9-1 DIVOC and infected someone dear to them. Well, I mean, we're all doing our part at this point to protect the most vulnerable. So let's lay that one to the side. But I, for one, am not afraid of if I get 9-1 DIVOC. And several people in the keto space have gotten 9-1 DIVOC. Most prominently, diet doctor, Dr. Andreas Ehrenfeld has gotten it. He had very little symptoms and pretty much it was nothing to him. Mike Muscle, Metabolic Mike here on Instagram, he also got it. He has had some side effects. He was showing his blood pressure has kind of remained elevated a little bit. He did lose his sense of taste and smell and various other things. But in general, he said it was like a bad cold for about a day, day and a half, and that was it. And it wasn't a big deal. And so I think what a lot of us are doing are weighing, okay, if it hits me, great, it hits me. And then you build up antibodies, and I know they say, well, the antibodies won't last long. And so all of these things are going into people's decision about taking or not taking the V word. And this is kind of where we are. So the way they're going to appeal to you, the most successful appeals for health decisions, they say, are transparent. They want to engage the individual and help individuals learn and remember information. And so people are more likely to react positively to an appeal that is paired with questions. So this is one of the tactics, you guys, that they're going to use to push the 9-1 DIVOC V word. They're going to have questions asked of you. So what will happen if you get 9-1 DIVOC? They want you to start thinking about that. And how could you benefit if you actually got the 9-1 DIVOC V word? How will my family benefit if I get the V word? And how will the public out there benefit if I get the V word? So they're trying to set it up so that you think about all of those questions in relation to whether you're going to get the V word or not. And the idea here is asking questions makes it more likely people will actively engage with this information instead of just being passive. So if someone is just like, I'm not taking the V word, then someone engages in conversation asking these words, they say it's a psychological tactic that makes you start thinking about it a little more rather than just having this passiveness about it. That makes sense? They also say V words are a key medical intervention in the last century, basically eliminating smallpox, polio, diphtheria, mumps, measles, and rubella. But no mandate has been put in place for the 9-1 DIVOC V word, at least not yet. In fact, there is no precedent for creating and distributing a V word for a virus that has caused a global worldwide pandemic affecting people of all ages. Research tells us that the newness of this V word, concern about the long-term side effects, and the growing anti-V word movement could contribute to hesitation. Communication about the 9-1 DIVOC V word will have to circumvent some individuals' natural defenses to help them come to their own decision about taking a V word to prevent a virus that is affecting society in a widespread way. That's the thing, like, affecting society in a widespread way, I don't really see that 9-1 DIVOC is affecting society in a widespread way. Yes, people are getting exposed to it. And yes, a portion of those people are having adverse reactions and having different things happen. I know the media loves to harp on the 300 and whatever thousand people that have died in America. I know the media likes to harp on the millions of cases of 9-1 DIVOC, and I know they want to talk about we need to all do our part and we're in this together and blah, 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 blah. But if we're taking care of people and we're giving them the information about how to take care of their host, which is what each individual body is, it's not a widespread problem, and they're trying to make it out to be. We might see a quicker and more widespread acceptance of the 9-1 DIVOC V word if people perceive the outcome of getting the V word for themselves as a return to life close to what it was before the pandemic. Can I just tell you something? If you believe that taking the V word is going to get us back to life close to what it was before the pandemic, you're not thinking straight. You do realize life is never going back to what it was before. You realize that, right? This is... And it's another psychological tactic, guys. They're trying to fool people into believing, well, just get the V word and your life will be back to normal again. And of course, human nature is that you will do anything to be out of misery. You will do anything to not feel the fear that you've had. And so if they convince you strongly enough, oh, just get the V word and we'll get back to somewhat like where we were before. No, we won't. It's just not going to happen. And even think about how they have conditioned us to be scared of each other and conditioned us to put on a mask and not have that kind of social interaction with each other. You don't just undo that. Like, we now have 10, 11 months or so of this kind of thing happening. How easily do you think that's going to get undone? It's not. It's going to remain in place. There's going to be people, even if they declared this over in the summer of next year, you know how long it would take people after they have already kind of conditioned us to be scared of one another and to, oh my gosh, and to have this heightened sense of fear all the time? How do you undo that Pandora's box that's already been opened? And so that's going to be a challenge as well. All right, let's get to the next article. I'm trying to go through all these so we can get all of these ideas in here. So there's a Vanderbilt researcher, Catherine Royster, is the author of the story. Associate Professor of Psychology, Jennifer Trueblood. There's Jennifer. You can see her picture. And she said, even if we have an effective 9-1 DIVOC V word and we can produce as many doses as we need, we still have to get people to take it. There have been numerous reports in the media that people are skeptical, so I wanted to see what might affect V-word uptick. So she's a researcher in the realm of psychology. From a psychological perspective, immunization with a brand new V-word is a gamble. Individuals may weigh the potential benefits of the V-word against the financial cost and physical pain of getting the shot, plus the probability it may yield no benefit or may even cause active harm. To help determine whether people's personal risk preference might affect their willingness to take the V-word, she analyzed data from a wide-ranging survey that's been running ever since March. The survey asks a representative sample of nationwide participants about various behaviors, attitudes, and outcomes related to 9-1 DIVOC, including their natural willingness to take on the risk and whether they plan to take a V-word if it becomes available. Overall, individuals with higher risk preferences were more likely to say they would get the V-word, while individuals with lower risk preferences were more likely to say they do not want to get the V-word. And that makes sense. Like if you're someone who's sick and you're worried about getting 9-1 DIVOC and it being worse, like that's the dilemma here. Think about the people that have the comorbidities, the 3 or 4 or 5, 10, 20 comorbidities that would make them more likely than not that if they got 9-1 DIVOC, they would be in trouble. Maybe in their minds, they're like, okay, I'd rather get the V-word and take my chances with whatever risks there because it's almost a death sentence if I get it naturally. So I could see why there would be more embracement of the V-word for that population. But people that are relatively healthy and those of us that are in the percentage well above 99% that are going to recover from this if you get exposed to it, there's really not this, oh my gosh, I have to jump at this, because we see the risk reward as way worse taking the V-word than not. And I did the Jimmy Rants a couple weeks ago about that PEG that's in this V-word causing autoimmune disease and anaphylactic shock and all these kinds of things. So for me, 49-year-old Jimmy Moore, I see it more as a risk to take the V-word than if I get exposed to 9-1 DIVOC and let my body take care of it. I have been doing things supplementally in my diet to protect myself, very high dose vitamin D, zinc, just making sure that I'm taking care of all the levels for my body so that even when that thing hits me, I will be ready for it. I'm coming at you like Chuck Norris, 9-1 DIVOC. And so that's kind of where we are. Like, how are they going to convince people like me and others like you? I see Leland says I won't be taking it. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. How are they going to reach people like us? And that's what they're trying to do with these psychological tactics. So, given these findings, True Blood then wanted to determine whether certain messages might convince risk-averse people to take the 9-1 DIVOC V-word. In a separate experiment, she tested 2 different messages. Listen to this. One emphasized social duty and benefit. It's going to help greater society. Don't you want to help society? Yes, of course you do. Referring to the way widespread V-word helps build herd immunity to a disease. The other message was focused on a hypothetical V-word's high rate of effectiveness, limited side effects, and approval through a standardized, rigorous process. The problem is I know too much in that realm. I know that there are concerns with the safety and that there are side effects with that V-word. Study participants either got one of the messages or they got both in combination, or they were in a control group that got no messaging at all. The results were surprising. We thought that combining both of those messages of it's your civic duty to society to build herd immunity and it's a high rate of effectiveness, limited side effects, and approval through a rigorous process. We know all that's not true, but if they said both of those things, they thought those would be the most effective. But what they found was that combining them wasn't any more effective than giving them no message at all. We also found that people who were risk averse had a really negative response to the efficacy, like what I was just saying. They don't believe it's effective, while the message about herd immunity had a positive impact on the willingness to get V-word. So they're going to push this kind of, well, we got to get to herd immunity. The problem is Dr. Fauci has now moved that goalpost from like 65, 70% now to 90%. And I don't know about you, I know it could push some people, oh, okay, well, it has to be 90%. I guess I should do my part to go. But other people might be like, okay, that's unreasonable. We're not going to get 9 out of 10 people to take this V-word. Think about the seasonal flu V-word. You want to know what the rate of the seasonal flu V-word was in 2019? It was 50%, which means that they weren't anywhere close to creating herd immunity for the seasonal flu last year. 50%. So why do they expect 90% are going to line up for this 9-1 DIVOC? Trueblood, the researcher, plans to conduct follow-up research to further explore factors that influence people's decisions about the 9-1 DIVOC V-word. This study did not investigate people who categorically refuse all V-words. I don't think anybody is going to convince those who categorically refuse all V-words. I don't know how you reach those people. I'm not one of those people. I think a V-word in the right circumstance perhaps could be beneficial. The problem is I haven't been convinced that the 9-1 DIVOC V-word is one of those. It also did not address all factors previously shown to affect V-word uptake, variables like people's previous experience with V-words. Could you imagine if you had a friend or family member who had an adverse reaction to a V-word? How do you convince a person like that they themselves now need to get a V-word? Yeah, I don't know how you do that. Social and demographic characteristics, like we talked about the black community with the Tuskegee experiment and their history, they don't want any part of a rushed V-word. And the level of trust in the healthcare system or government can all interact with risk tolerance and with each other to inform a person's final decision about a particular V-word. Regardless of the factors at play, the researchers said that the implications are clear. Scientists, public health officials, and other V-word communicators need to be intentional in their messaging. From a policy or marketing standpoint, messaging needs to be very carefully tested. When people start to think about what they want to say about the V-word, it's critical to realize that the information is not going to be received equally by everyone. And that's the challenge they're in right now. I don't know how they're going to get to 90%. Because certain people are easily manipulated by psychology. A lot of us, not so much. And I'm trying to think, what would it take for me, and think about this yourself, what would it take to take this V-word for 9-1 DIVOC? You know what it would have taken for me? If 9-1 DIVOC didn't have a less than 1% recovery, greater than 99% recovery. Let's say the percentage, instead of 99% plus, let's say the percentage was 70%, meaning 30% of people getting this were dying. Now think about that for a second. 30%. So that's a 1/3 risk of dying. Would you take the V-word now? Honestly, I would. I would at that point. If it was killing 1 out of 3 people, basically, almost 1 out of 4 people, I would highly, highly consider taking it. I would still be concerned about the health effects, but it would seem to me that if it was killing people at a much greater rate, you would have more buy-in. But I think the fact that it's not killing people at this enormous rate is kind of giving people the breaks, right? All right. So this next one is from a podcast interview. This lady was on Speaking of Psychology podcast. Gretchen Chapman is her name. She is a cognitive psychologist who studies health behavior and discusses why people choose to get V-worded or not and how policymakers can encourage it. So let me skip around here so that we can get to the heart of what she's saying here. A moment ago, I mentioned a recent poll that asked whether people would get a 9-1 DIVOC V word, which, as we know, does not yet exist. This was before it came out. So let's start with something less hypothetical. We already have a yearly flu V word, but less than half get it. Why is it so low, and how does it compare to rates for other V words? V word rates for a lot of V words are quite high. So for all the pediatric V words that children are supposed to get, their uptake is more than 90%. If you look at all of the V words as a group, 3/4 of children have had all of their V words on time. So that's certainly far from optimal, but higher than the stats you're looking for with the flu. Let's skip down to where it specifically looks at the 9-1 DIVOC. It was a long interview in the podcast. They did say, the expert, Ms. Chapman, did say conspiracy theories and misinformation are dangerous to public health, but those dangers don't just rest in the world of V word. It happens across all of psychology. So she's kind of getting into, like, this is kind of the way people think. So the 9-1 DIVOC V word we're waiting for. On the one hand, some people may be especially motivated to take it in order to get back to normal, which we talked about. We probably won't. But on the other hand, many others are especially worried about the safety because of the perception of it being rushed. Does that change what health officials need to do in terms of public messaging? So here we go. She said, I think it might. So I mentioned earlier that informational interventions to try to change what people think about the V word have an inconsistent track record. If you think about it, when was the last time that just learning one short fact changed your behavior about anything? You're someone who doesn't exercise enough, and then someone gives you a little brochure, and all of a sudden, you're going to start exercising enough? That seems pretty unrealistic. And it also might seem unrealistic that a short message about the safety and efficacy of a V word would change someone who never bothered to get a flu shot. This is the thing too, like if half the population isn't getting the seasonal flu shot, then it stands to reason they're already conditioned to not get the flu shot. Why would they get this one for 9-1 DIVOC? But part of the reason why these information messages are such an uphill battle is because people already know a lot about the flu shot. They've maybe experienced that year after year. I never get the flu. I've literally never gotten the flu, and I've never taken the flu shot. Even though I never get the V word, so how useful could it be? That's the way people think. Or I have this group of friends that tell me V words are risky. And so I've thought about it a lot. And so a short information message is unlikely to make a big change in their beliefs. And at this point, we have social media, we have videos on YouTube, we've got all kinds of information everywhere, and people are hearing about how V words probably aren't on the up and up. But with 9-1 DIVOC, we don't know anything about that V word yet. So this is a situation where an information intervention might actually influence people and their belief and then their behavior, because we're sort of starting from a starting point of no information. So communicating exactly how safe and effective this new V word is, and communicating that honestly, she said, I think is really important. And if there's ever a time when an information intervention is going to impact people's behavior, this might be it. The problem is that once this thing came out, we started seeing people get the V word publicly. I posted a few of these on my stories, but you see where they go and they act like they're putting it in their arm. And these are supposedly healthcare workers. And the plunger is already depressed. And so if the plunger's already depressed and then they're, talking, oh, wow, oh, it's great, I'm getting the V word, it's awesome, and pulls it away and sticks it in her hand, and you're kind of going, what was that? What was that? Or like when Dr. Fauci gets his V word in his arm, and then the next day goes on CNN and says, oh yeah, I'm a little sore today. It was over there, dumbass. Do you kind of get the feeling that feeds into this narrative of why people are skeptical to want to get this V word? And don't get me started on Tiffany Dover and all the questions around that poor girl that passed out on national television just moments after getting the V word. So many images that people have now that's just making it where people don't want to take it. So there's this sense that it isn't a big deal, and we have an administration that's telling us that 9-1 DIVOC isn't a big deal, even though we're seeing people on ventilators, folks who were in the hospital for weeks. Is it possible you can scare people into getting a V word? So Ms. Chapman once again says there's a lot of literature and health psychology on fear messaging. I don't think fear messaging is going to work, because all we've gotten all year long is fear, 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 fear. So if then you now fear people with the V word, I think we're over-feared. We're all feared out. And I don't think that's going to work at all. Sometimes fear messages are effective, but they can also backfire and produce an ostrich effect, where the person wants to hide from the fearful information rather than taking action. And I think because of the fear they've pushed all year long, if you keep pushing fear and then you add fear again, people may go, ugh, and not want to listen at all. Fear messages seem to work better to promote inaction. That's an interesting line. So it's more likely to make you just not do anything. So if you want people to stay in their houses and not go out, a fear message might be pretty effective. But if you're trying to promote action, like going to get a V word, that may backfire unless you have a clear route of action for people so they know exactly where and when they can get the V word and that they trust that it's safe. That's when fear could be effective. Let's see if there's anything here. So a real risk that we're facing with Operation Warp Speed to get a very fast 9-1 DIVOC V word is we may undermine some of the trust in the system. She said, yeah, I think we've been talking a little bit with the Gallup poll that I mentioned a little while ago, that some groups may be reticent to accept it, non-white Americans and others. Will different messages and strategies be necessary for communicating to different groups? She said, perhaps we know that recommendations from healthcare providers are strongly associated with taking the V word, and there were even some experiments that randomized patients to get different kinds of recommendations, so we know that recommendations have even a causal impact on the V word uptake. It's very possible, though, that the physician recommendations would be most effective for people who already have a high trust in the medical system, and maybe that's part of my reticence to it. I don't trust the medical system in general when it comes to kind of chronic diseases. Break my arm, yeah, I want them to fix it, but they just haven't been really good at fixing chronic disease. And a lot of the people that are succumbing to 9-1 DIVOC, they're dealing with major chronic disease. And this is part of the problem. All right. I've heard suggestions that once there's a 9-1 DIVOC V word, that it be coupled with the seasonal flu V word. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you believe it would get more people to take it? Well, no, half the people already don't take the seasonal flu. So throw in the 9-1 DIVOC one in there with the seasonal flu V word. Well, how does that make sense? She says the convenience might help a little, but probably not a lot. All right, let's skip forward. This was a long interview on this podcast. Oh, so one of the tactics that they're thinking about using is paying people to get the 9-1 DIVOC V word. Kind of like when you go to get blood, you get $20. So she said there's evidence that paying people to get a flu shot increased their uptake, but that's difficult to scale. Well, number one, how do you pay 330 million people to take a V word? If you want to get 300 billion people V worded, I assume she means worldwide, and you're going to pay them each $5, that's a lot of money. Well, who's going to do it just for, I wouldn't do it for $5. Right now, I would not do it for any amount of money, but there are people that are in economic dire straits who, if you said, I'll give you $500 to take the V word, they wouldn't even hesitate. They'd do it. Some might even do it as low as $150 or $100. There's no amount of money that they could bribe me with to make me take this. And here's the thing. If it's that great, tell me why it's great. Why would you have to bribe me with money to get me to take it? All right. Trying to see if there's anything else in that one. I don't see. All right, so the last article that I want to look at is they're trying to get people to persuade their friends to take the 9-1 DIVOC V word. So there's an article here. Here's how you convince your friends who are skeptical. I'm going to very quickly go through this because I know it's gone very long. Thank you guys for being here. All right, so don't judge people, meet them where they are. Many people who plan to get the V word are confounded by those who are hesitant. So if you're one of those rah-rah people about the V word, you don't understand why certain others of us aren't that excited. They said that there are understandable reasons that someone would be uncertain about a brand new V word. Regular people are not trained in science. Let's don't go there. I have been told this, by the way, many times with some of the Jimmy rants I've done recently talking about 9-1 DIVOC. And what do you have to say about this? You're not trained in science. Well, that's true. But I do have a brain, and I do have an ability to communicate, and I do have an ability to analyze information and then disseminate that information in a usable manner. That's what I'm good at. And so don't think that just because you're a regular person not trained in science that you don't have anything to offer. It's why I come on here and do these Jimmy rants like this so that you have information. And information makes you more powerful about making good choices. He goes on to say they haven't been trained to think analytically about these kind of complex scientific issues. Yeah, they try to throw that out there too. Oh, it's just so complex you wouldn't understand as a layperson. Well, la-di frickin' da. God gave me a big old brain up here and I use it. So don't let anybody say, well, you don't have the scientific background to talk. If you've got a brain and you've got analytical skills, you better be talking. When they don't trust mainstream news sources or scientific authorities and they don't know how to vet information, then it's understandable from that perspective that they can be misled. And there are people out there that they're not trusting of any of the scientific authorities, they're not trusting of the mainstream news, and they don't know how to vet. But the clear difference is there are people that know how to vet. There are people who do understand scientific authority. And it's not just scientific authority, but it's a scientific authority from all angles. What they're referring to is if you're not paying attention to the mainstream messaging, the mainstream narrative of the science. You can't go off the beaten path of that, even though there's other science that would be relevant. In today's outrage culture, he said people use shame to call out what they perceive as irresponsible behavior, but shame is not nearly as effective in changing behavior as you might think. The authors of a paper developed by the Center for Public Interest Communications said, and this is an initiative specifically on building trust in the 9-1 DIVOC V word, wrote, shame is likely to achieve the opposite reaction that you're hoping for. Look to more constructive emotions, things like love, hope, and a desire to protect in order to get people to act. And don't dismiss people's concerns. Reasonable skeptics are not going to trust the V word just because someone says you should. If someone is already skeptical of big pharma, for example, don't disregard that. There's a lot of reasons that you should be skeptical of the financial interests of large pharmaceutical companies and, oh yeah, by the way, the financial interest of some of these people on TV pushing V word, V word, V word. Let's not forget, Bill Gates has a lot of money vested in V words. Dr. Anthony Fauci has a lot of money vested in V words. So when you hear things from these people on television, you've got to take that into consideration. Why people are skeptical, right? Don't treat people's concerns as dumb. Listen to them, validate them, figure out how to address them. Remember, they're trying to teach lay people how to convince their friends and family about how to push the 9-1 DIVOC V word. The first thing is just understanding the base of their concerns, not dismissing them, but trying to grapple with them. Before launching into an argument, try your best to size up your audience. Are they just V-word hesitant, or are they hardcore anti-V-word? It's unlikely you'll change the mind of someone who is militant about anti-V-word, but experts say they're rare. Those who are skeptical of V-words are far more common. To figure out where someone stands on the 9-1 DIVOC V-word, be curious. Ask things like, well, why do you think like that? Where are you hearing about this kind of stuff? And why do you trust this information? Asking such questions will help you understand if people are now persuadable and what may actually persuade them. For example, if someone thinks 9-1 DIVOC is no more dangerous than the flu, you know which belief you have to correct. If they're getting their information from certain sources with an agenda, they've been indoctrinated to be skeptical of experts. So noting that the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Fauci, says the V-word is safe may not matter to them. No, it doesn't matter to people that are skeptical because we know he has a vested interest in said V-word. Know your facts, but know that the facts aren't everything. A 2010 study found that trying to correct someone's perception could actually backfire. When you encounter facts that don't support your belief, it actually grows your belief even stronger. It's an uphill battle to convince someone who has a deeply held view that is flawed. Human beings are hardwired for bias. If you're a new mom who believes V-words cause autism, do you look for research that shows whether they actually do, or do you look up vaccines cause autism to find stories to affirm your beliefs? Likely it's the latter, which is driven by motivational reasoning, our psychological tendency to perpetuate your own belief and dismiss anything that runs counter to it. However, if you and the person you're trying to persuade share the same identity or social circles, they may be more apt to hear what you have to say. So part of their promotion is be clear, be transparent, and be honest. When you communicate with someone hesitant about the V-word, experts say you should tell them that the V-words are 95% effective. That doesn't really do a whole lot for me when my body is over 99% effective. It's also misleading to tell people that these ones from Pfizer and Moderna are 95% effective. That's a misleading statement, because it's not talking about what those things are going to cause in you potentially. All it's about is 9-1 DIVOC. Okay, great. Maybe it provides protection for 9-1 DIVOC, but what about the potential risks involved with taking it that go beyond that 95% number? Don't downplay the side effects, they say. There are some, but they're not severe and they're very short-lived. Oh yeah, autoimmune disease, I hear you recover from that. Wait. Once you get autoimmune disease, you have it for life. Short term. Not short term. Thousands of people have gotten V-words and none have reported serious, long-lasting health concerns. We haven't had it out there long enough to know that. None have reported serious, long-lasting health concerns. I posted on my stories a couple of days ago this black lady who's a nurse, and she got Bell's palsy after the first dose of the Moderna V-word. Bell's palsy. And she's got that for life now. They're lying, guys. Don't buy into the messaging. People who seem to feel worse after the second dose may need a day to recover. If you have extreme allergies, you should talk to your doctor. If someone's concerned about the V-words were developed too quickly to be safe, they were released to the public 11 months after it surfaced. You can acknowledge it's normal to have fear about these things, but explain to them that the science was not compromised. Yes, it was. They did not go through the proper 3 phases of developing a V-word. They just didn't. The time is important in these phases. It's not just going through the phases, but spending the time necessary to make sure it's safe, and it didn't happen. Public health experts, those involved in the effort and those who weren't, all agree this is true. Another thing you could say is this has gone really quick, but it's really amazing how good science is. Some people are saying that this should be a model for future V words. We now know that we can do it in a very short period of time with this level of rigor. This is now going to be the model for all future V words, which that should be frightening, because what happens if we get a COVID-21? And then they try to rush this. Are we going to be taking like all these little V words for the rest of our life? This is something that's, they need to address this if they're going to try to push the 9-1 DIVOC V word on us. Well, okay, we take it, we get immunity for what, a few months? And then what, we take it again? And then what happens when a new one comes along? Because let's not pretend like the last virus we'll ever have on the earth is 9-1 DIVOC. And yeah, Joshua says we already have other variants out there now. So why, if we already have different variants, why is this one so important? And what's going to happen when the next one comes? So we keep taking the 9-1 DIVOC booster shots indefinitely for the rest of our life. Now we have this new one, and we need another, what would that be? 1-2 DIVOC? V word, and then you would take that one for the rest of your life. Are we going to be like having, like having V words constantly? Does that make any damn sense at all? It doesn't to me. Up until recently, none of us knew anyone who had gotten the 9-1 DIVOC V word. Over the next month, we're going to know more and more. We're going to start knowing people who have been V worded. So they say that familiarity with someone else that having the V word is going to convince you to take it. Research shows immediate connections in your social networks matter for changing behavior, partly because they set norms about what others are doing. When we get the V word, other people who are like us will look at that and say, oh, well, I'm just like that person. I guess I should do it too. They also say correct any misinformation. You're probably not going to change people's minds. But even if you can't convince them, you can debunk the misinformation. I've been told many times that I'm promoting misinformation, and I'm like, okay, what did I get wrong? And every time I have asked that question of someone who has watched the Jimmy Rants where I talk about 9-1 DIVOC, correct what I have said that's wrong, I almost never get a response. They're just like, oh, you just need to take the V word and trust it. Oh, you're overblowing this, and 330,000 Americans are dead, and it's, the blood's on your hands because you're talking about this, and I'm going, okay, but that doesn't tell me where I'm wrong. That PEG ingredient I talked about a couple weeks ago, leading to autoimmune disease. Oh, it doesn't happen. Okay, well, how am I wrong? Correct it. I want to be corrected if I'm wrong. Doesn't happen. So they say post links to fact check people to the CDC or the World Health Organization. Oh, don't worry. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, they all do that for you. If you post some misinformation, they definitely will put up that little link on your post. Make the V word seem as uncontroversial as it should be. Don't make it seem like it's optional. An unintended consequence of the many opinion polls about 9-1 DIVOC V word is that they may lead some people to believe it's controversial. Oh, you bet it's controversial. Let's not act like it's not controversial. It's controversial because there are major concerns out there. When pollsters ask people, are you going to get the 9-1 DIVOC V word? That question sort of implies, oh, so maybe some people don't want to get the V word. No, it doesn't. Are you going to get the 9-1 DIVOC V word is just a straightforward question of, are you going to get it or are you not going to get it? And yet they're saying in this article that, oh, that reads into that some people don't want it. I didn't realize this was something that there was some controversy about. Everybody knows there's controversy. They're trying, and this is the psychological tactic, you guys, to make it seem like there's no controversy. Wow, nothing to see here. Just take the damn vaccine and you'll be fine. Let's frame the 9-1 DIVOC V word as the best practice standard of care. Of course you're going to get the V word. That's what everybody's doing because that's how we're going to stop this. This is what we've been waiting for. Blech. Are you seeing how they're trying to do this, guys? And I took a lot of time today on this one, and thank you for indulging me for 75 minutes talking about kind of the way they're trying to frame this to get people to take this V word because they're desperate. They want people to take it. And I'm going to say this now. You watch. When these messages and these tactics don't work is when we will start seeing mandatory, compulsory V word happening. People are already pushing back on that when I say those kinds of things. They're like, oh no, they would never put, you want to bet? If they can't convince us through psychological manipulation and tactics, they will eventually make it, they'll have a misery index, so to speak. You won't be able to fly. They've already told us that. Oh, you won't be able to fly unless you have the 9-1 DIVOC V word passport. Oh, you won't be able to go to a concert unless you show this little thing on your phone. These apps are already made, you guys. You won't be able to go to the store. You won't be able to do this. You won't be able to do that. They're going to throttle so much of your, quote, normal life if you don't get the V word that eventually they're hoping the misery of that will force people into taking it. And of course, here's my thinking on that. Like, why push this so hard? H1N1 was far worse than 9-1 DIVOC. And we didn't shut anything down. Life went on. It was tragic the people that died, and it was tragic the number of people that got infected by that and had issues. But we didn't have to shut everything down. Life didn't change. There was no talk of everybody getting the V word. No. What makes this one so special? And again, what makes it, or the next one that comes, why is this one so important? You got to start thinking about these things. Why do you think they want this shot in our arms? Every single one of us. Something to think about. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to come here first to Instagram, then over to Twitch, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. When you talk for 80 minutes, your voice starts to go, bleh. And I have a podcast after this is over, and then another podcast recording after that's over. So, all right, let's see what you guys have to say. Please share the link to the report. Yep, so the original report at the beginning, I will remind people, was from the Weston A. Price Foundation, westonaprice.org/coronavirus. Population control, says CKS. That is what a lot of people are concerned about. Carnivore Java, I used to be one of those people, and I'm so happy I'm not anymore. Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to become very skeptical of all of this. CKS, I've seen some of these people who are essential workers saying they have side effects, but not specifically what the side effects are outside of the regular V word ones. Yeah, and the thing is, we won't know until they kind of live life a little longer. And this is why the phase 3 clinical trials should have taken 5 to 7 years to do, and they didn't do those trials. Joshua, they skipped animal trials for these shots, but they say they've been working on them for a while and they've all failed. Yeah, every one of the animal trials for these mRNA V words have failed miserably. The part that gets me is that they test on healthy people and then roll it out to the most vulnerable. Yeah, so all of the people in the phase 3 trial that they used, every single one of them were healthy under the age of 50. There were no kids in that phase 3 trial. There were no old people in that phase 3 trial. There was very limited numbers of minorities in the phase 3 trial. You're right. They didn't really test the market of people that they are now putting on this priority list to get the V word. They say the antibodies will decrease over time, and they're right. That's how the body works, but T-cell memory doesn't go away, and that memory is what ramps up your antibody production when exposed. That's true. They're not talking about T-cell at all. All right. It would take bodily force to get me to take it. Yeah, I hunker down in my house. Come get me. Because, I don't think I'm going to put that in my body at all. A 30% death rate would be another question. Exactly. But see, they're acting, Joshua, as if it is a 30% death rate. And it's not. That's the shocking part of all this. Prague Queen says, I think the news report saying that the elites that are getting the V word first because of their privilege was nothing but a psyop to manipulate everyone to rush out and get it. Yeah, I've been seeing AOC and Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence and all these politicians get out there and get the V word. And I'm thinking, okay, how do we know that had the V word from Pfizer or Moderna in it? How do we not know that that was maybe a saline solution? How do we not know that it was just fake? And we've seen, like I said, many fake videos out there of even some of the healthcare workers that they've already got the plunger depressed, and then they're acting like they're going in, and they're acting like they're pulling it out, and then hiding it so you don't see that they really didn't put in anything into that person. Why play those games? I've never had the flu or taken the flu V word. Yeah, a lot of people haven't. They really haven't. My mother-in-law gets sick every time she takes the flu shot, and then she gets sick anyway. It really doesn't make sense to take it. Well, I hear more people say they get the flu after they get the flu shot than not. Do they talk about one tactic being a registry for people who don't take it? Oh, I'm sure. No, that's not the psychological tactic, but I'm sure they're going to use that. There'll be some registry, or there'll be some, like I said, this app that if you don't have the passport, you won't be allowed into an airplane. You won't be allowed to go to store, go to concert, and blah, blah, blah. My husband fears they will require it for his employment and for kids to go to school. Well, the school thing will be interesting. I think there will be major pushback if they're going to force kids going to public school to take this. I think you will see the largest evacuation from the public school system you've ever seen. They've already kind of trained parents about how to homeschool. They would figure out something that would be an alternative to public school if that happened. We've already been told there's variants of COVID. That's right, we have. Hopefully there will be people making fake proof that they got the virus. Hopefully there will be people making fake proof that we got the virus. Maybe the V word, the fake proof that you got the V word. So you're thinking that there could be scalpers out there that could create the little hack into the app to make it show that you got the V word. I see what you're saying, Southern Clean Living. When they reevaluated the numbers from H1N1 years after they found the death rate was 0.2%, they thought it was going to be terrible at the start. Yeah, and yet they didn't really do anything about that one, though. Have you done a rant on all the fake meat being pushed on us? Leland, you need to follow Jimmy Rants, because yes, I do those all the time. Sergio says, the one I took, the flu shot, I was down for 3 days, never again. Yeah, it hits a lot of people hard. Joshua says the mask requirements in schools has already caused many people to yank their kids out of school. Yeah. I couldn't imagine. I don't have kids, but if I had kids and they were forced to wear a mask for 6 to 7 hours in school, no, I'm not going to deprive my kid of oxygen. That would not happen. All right, thank you, Instagram. I don't see anybody talking over at Twitch. I see you guys there. Thank you for watching today, Jimmy Rants on Twitch. But no comments. Thank you for being here, though. Let's pop over here now to Facebook. What's up, Facebook? See what you have to say on this one. How about you won't be able to work or travel if you don't get it? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think they're trying subtle messages now to try to convince you, but when those don't work, they're going to pull that kind of thing. And that will convince a lot of people because they feel like they need their livelihood. They feel like they need to travel or want to travel. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Berkeley says, I don't understand why people can't recognize that we're being manipulated, especially when information is out there. Well, Berkeley, they're trusting in the mainstream sources of information. You and me and many other people are looking at more than just the mainstream news. Let this be a newsflash, by the way, if you're watching this. If you're getting your news only from mainstream news sources, you gotta get away from that. Like you're being propagandized. Gonna say it that bluntly. And not just about the V word. You're being propagandized about a lot of things. But you're right. I don't understand it either. David said, as a layperson, it's hard to know what the right choice is. I was wondering if you could find out if Gary Taubes is taking the V word. He's brilliant, a scientist, and a real iconoclast. It would be interesting to know. I have reached out to Gary about his new book, The Case for Keto, and doing an interview with him. So if I can get that interview, David, I might ask him that question. The pushback is coming, says Berkeley. I think so too. Heidi says, I'm wondering if employers can require it for employment if it's not FDA approved. That's the thing. At some point, the FDA is going to have to poop or get off the pot. Right now, it's just emergency use authorization. But what happens if the FDA says, yeah, we can't approve this? Although I don't put it past the powers that be to pay off the FDA to give it the FDA approval. You don't want to think that way, but I don't put it past them. You should do a survey of all the smartest people you've interviewed over the years and ask them if they will recommend that their family members get the V word. The thing is, we don't know the long-term effects of 9-1-DIVOC or the V word. Yeah, I think my list of interview guests is probably too jaded for that because we already are skeptical of Big Pharma. A lot of them are skeptical of kind of the science that's been presented about nutritional health. So they probably would come back very strongly against the V word if I had to guess. I don't trust the medical system or pharmaceutical companies or the FDA. Yeah, you're not alone, Lynn. You're not alone. Tanya says, I had to sign a declination letter from a healthcare company I work for yesterday. It also said they reserve the right to make it mandatory. They will have to fire me first. I hate that for people like yourself. And there's a growing group of healthcare workers, and at the statistics at the beginning of some of these articles, they were showing that like half of the healthcare workers are like, we're going to wait and see how somebody else responds before we take it. Candace, I have MS, hypersensitivity to drugs, chronic urticaria, asthma, and many other severe allergies. I do not trust the medical system either. I will not take it because it could injure me further. What's the point if they don't know if it's effective? Here in Canada, I may be forced to if I want to go in public again, at which time I'm moving north to the woods. Yeah. If this wasn't money driven, they would have pursued the hydroxychloroquine for prophylactic use. I think so too. And Carol says, why no discussion of diet and nutrition? Exactly. In fact, I have an interview coming up on the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show. We're coming back with all my podcasts next week. And on Wednesday, I have my first brand new interview of the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show in 2021, January, whatever that is, 6th, with Dr. Eric Westman and Amy Berger about their new book called End Your Carb Confusion. And so I asked Eric about that. Why haven't we heard about how to improve your metabolic health through nutrition and diet and da-da-da? He said, I don't know. That should have been the first thing on their radar screen. All right, thank you, Facebook. Let's pop over here now to my YouTube channel. Lots of comments over here on YouTube. See what you guys have to say. Hello, Johanna from Finland. Appreciate you being here. Charlotte says, how do we really know they had the CD of the symptoms or just a regular cold? Yeah, I mean, how do we know if they have 9-1 DIVOC? A lot of the classification of even the seasonal flu, which has magically disappeared, by the way. You look up the flu statistics on the CDC website, it's basically nil. And so that's suspicious. And then all the known classifications of 9-1 DIVOC, that someone had a gunshot wound, but their death was by 9-1 DIVOC. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, some coroners are already starting to speak out about that kind of stuff. And it's happened more and more. My common sense says they didn't have 9-1 DIVOC. They had a cold. Yeah. Rachel says, hi, I'm a medic, and colleagues have looked at me like I have two heads when I said I wasn't rushing out to get the V word. Yeah, Rachel, you're not alone. That statistic in the article I mentioned earlier, 50% of healthcare workers, they're going to wait and see what other people are going to have happen before they jump on the bandwagon. Walker says, Jimmy, love you like a brother. I disagree with the methodology of this report. I think they should have excluded the people that don't take the flu shot and people that don't like any shots. Probably. And I'm not promoting this information necessarily to say that it was completely in line with what I believe, Walker. I was just reading the information. But you're right. I mean, I think those are other considerations that need to be overcome as well. The whole point, though, is if people are reticent to getting this 9-1 DIVOC V word, then they need to figure out ways to reach those people. That's the overriding message of this Jimmy Rants. I won't light myself on fire to keep you warm. I hope you understand, says Charlotte. Yeah. Zandeville, isn't your immune system close to 99% effective? Why would you then want a V word that's 95% effective? I thought the same thing, Zandeville. Tiara, I would disagree on one thing. I feel those with medical issues should be almost more aware to not get the V word. Well, I agree with you there, especially since they haven't tested people if they have antibodies with their special ingredient. Maybe works on what you can do for your health by taking vitamin D3, K2, sunshine, exercise, and food. I don't disagree with you there. I don't want something that we can't even talk about on a public forum. Isn't it a shame I have to call it 9-1 DIVOC V word just so I don't get censored on all these platforms? The only platform I won't be censored on is over here on Twitch. And so if I did exclusively Twitch, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do some Jimmy Rants where I can just let it all hang out and not have to play the code word game. We'll go exclusively on Twitch. You'll make a bunch of you go follow me on Twitch, which, by the way, download the Twitch app. I'm Jimmy Moore Rants over on Twitch. Watch over there sometime, and maybe I'll do an exclusive on Twitch one of these days. September says, my sister wasn't supposed to be in the first round of V-words because she's a nurse but working from home right now. They called her and said she could get it early. I really hope she'll be okay. Oh, she did get it. I'm thinking the fact of the people being willing to take it is why she's able to get hers. Wow. Pootie says it's criminal that they suppress info on HQC and ivermectin. They have unleashed the Great Reset. Well, there are a lot of people that believe that. Josie says, wow, they are seeing dollar signs having us to take booster shots. So they're basically saying in order to talk to people, they have to talk people into it. They have to lie, and lie some more. Sounds like it. Josie says, isn't it funny how misinformation's definition is now telling the truth? Oof. Yeah. So whenever someone tells me I'm spreading misinformation, oh, thank you. Like I've already made the conversion in my head of what that means. It means I'm speaking truth. You don't need the V word. I don't disagree. See if there's anything else that came in over here. There's a swinging door in between pharmaceutical companies, the CDC, and the FDA. And a lot of our politicians as well. Let's don't forget about that. A lot of them are bought and paid for by pharmaceutical company dollars. And that keeps them in line saying all the, quote, right things. Joshua said, I might be moving to the woods too, LOL. Yes, yes. So guys, they're using these tactics and they're using them strong and they're not even close. They're just getting started on them. Just you wait until this thing kind of drags on a little more and there's not near enough people lining up like they thought they would to get the V word. Once they get the stupid people out of the way, and with all due respect, anybody knowingly taking this and understanding all the risks involved and all the everything, and they still take it, okay, think of that as you want. But so what happens when the rest of us don't? What do they do next? Will it be compulsion? That is what I'm waiting on. How are they going to respond when these psychological tactics to push 9-1 DIVOC V word won't work? That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me right here over on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. So go check it out, Jimmy Rants, over on Instagram. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you missed the live, we actually do put it on the replay here on IGTV, so check it out there. We also simulcast on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube. We have the past episodes up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. And then finally pop over to the official website for this show. It is JimmyRants.com, and there's where you can see all the past episodes. So guys, tomorrow is Friday. Happy New Year tomorrow. But we are going to be live tomorrow. So tomorrow is Friday, and on Fridays we have Ask Me Anything. So get your questions ready. Literally ask any question you want about keto or business or something personal to me or hopes and aspirations for 2021. Come on, let's have some fun tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. And so until then, we'll see you then. All right.